Hey there, YouTube. Welcome on back to ArtichokeDip. My name is Rob, solo tabletop gamer. It's been a while. It's been a long time since I have uploaded a video. And a couple of reasons for that. And I've said this before in my other videos. One, I'm not a typical YouTube creator. I don't do this for money. I really don't. It's purely simple a hobby. That's all it is. And lately, well, things have been busy on my end, and then really I've had the want to game, just haven't had the time. And as things have moved and progressed and how our interests change and different things and stuff one thing will may catch our interest over the others, and we'll tend to lean towards that. And in my case, it's no different. And in my hiatus, we'll say, I love fantasy gaming. I love, the classic old school D&D modules and, everything about that type of gaming, miniature gaming, war gaming, and everything like that. But I needed a break. I was kind of, I don't know how you'd put it. I needed something different. It was just kind of like the same old thing over and over again. And like I go in cycles with things. So right now, what I'm currently gaming in and I'm interested in, eventually I'm going to get to that point to where I'm going to be like, I'm ready to go back to old school type of gaming, and I'll be back either into Forbidden Lands or the One Ring that I'm playing, D&D. I have several. So, and they're constantly ongoing, and when I get time I sit down and I will run through them and spend a few hours with them and enjoy them. So, but you're asking, where are you going with this, right? Yeah, we're gonna get there, all good time. So the gaming that I'm going to be talking about, and I guess I should stress this, like I said, this isn't about money. Really, I'm not concerned with likes or stuff like that. Likes are more for you guys, for now that everything is AI driven, and it's all about the algorithms. Yeah, if you guys want more gaming content, more content like mine or the solo RPG guy, and who knows how many other various solitaire gaming channels there are out there, by clicking the like button, it helps you guys, the viewer, get more of that, not me. To be honest with you, the majority of time, the stuff I enjoy to watch is a far cry from solitaire gaming. And where my interest in gaming recently have gone, it's completely different. And there's a couple of things with the new style of gaming I'm doing compared to the old that we're going to get into. Before I do, a little disclaimer. If you do like the video, click the like button. Like I said, it's going to help you guys get more content, not me. So it's up to you. Do it, you don't, really don't care. It doesn't matter. Other thing is, I'm not your average YouTuber. I don't upload every day. I'm not going to give you a play-by-play, break down every 5 minutes what happens in my life. So it's beneficial for you to click the subscribe button. When I do upload, you'll get a notification, and then that way you won't miss one. So, all right, let's jump on into the two different types of gaming, what I'm recently into now, what I enjoy about it. I give you my perspective on it. Some things you're going to need if you decide to try this out and put it on your game table. I know I've had a lot of fun with it, but versus fantasy gaming. Fantasy gaming. So, what do I mean by fantasy gaming? If you enjoy Pathfinder, you enjoy Dungeons and Dragons, you enjoy the One Ring, you enjoy the Forbidden Lands, you enjoy any of these type of game systems, they're all fantasy. They all have one common thread through them, and that is every and anything is possible. And depending on whether you play solitaire or what your game master may allow at the table is going to depict that. But for most, I'm going to say amounts of gamers out there. If you're playing in a fantasy world where you're dealing with high level of magic and you got mythological creatures and all these other things that are inhibiting the world, well, I'm going to say sky's the limit on to possibilities of what you can and you cannot do, which is cool. I enjoy that gaming when I want to do that gaming and I want to put forth the time that I do have to be able to do that. But recently, I've went a different direction, and there's a couple of game systems that I've got into. Really liked them. It was a little bit of a learning curve at first. Different type of gaming, how you approach it, and I quickly found that the way that I like the game, that I was going to have to find. I was really going to have to spend some time and find some counters that were decent for the board to represent these than typically what you get with the game system. So let's jump on into this and get on into it. And that is, I did a video on this and I talked about this and I explained the basic concepts. And I think the video didn't really do that well because it's very niche. It's something either you enjoy it or you don't. And if you don't, that's fine. You don't. One of the things that really fueled that love for this, I guess you should say, is when I was a kid, I grew up across the street from a small airport, and watching small planes, air shows, stuff like that, I always loved them. That was always probably why I'm a mechanic today, to be honest with you. I've always been extremely fascinated as to how do things work. I want to take them apart. I want to know why. I want to know why this works. If it doesn't work, why doesn't it work? What condition causes that not to do that? And so it turns out, you know, I've been doing that for my entire life, so evidently I must be decent at it, right? So as a kid, I loved it, absolutely loved it. I loved fighter jets, I loved small planes, loved large planes, loved, you know, trains, I mean, all the way into automobiles, and then, you know, one of my main loves, semis. Love diesels, love everything about diesel engines, and learning more about jet propulsion and the similarities of characteristics between the two, difference between power stroke versus a Brady cycle, but when you look at the fundamentals of the two, how similar they actually are. So it ignited a whole new level of excitement for me. And then as of course, after watching the second installment of the Top Gun franchises, it just rekindled that again, remembering as a kid watching that movie and being just completely impressed by it. And don't take me wrong, the way that I'm viewing it, I think a lot of people will look at it and they're looking at maybe the whole entire, some people may take away the camaraderie aspect of it. Some people may take away, maybe to them it seems like a macho thing. To me, really, how many bombs the things can carry, how many rounds of ammunition you can fire, that's like big whoop. Really, it doesn't pique my interest a whole lot. What I'm mainly interested in is just watching these things, how maneuverable they are, the power plants behind them, the raw power that comes out, and what we have achieved in aeronautics is just absolutely amazing. And that's what really got me back into it. And as I looked further into this, I started to find out there's a lot of games out there. There have been for a long time. It's just things that haven't been, I'm going to say, as popular as other game systems out there, that some of these companies have huge marketing budgets that they can afford to put commercials in your face, and everywhere you go, you're going to see a something to be able to draw you in to buy a new supplement guide or something like that. So they know what they're doing. They absolutely know what they're doing. Anyways, sorry, I do that. I don't script anything. Everything is just right off the top of my head. So I'm going to show you what I had put together, stuff that I had found, things that I have used to really make a very cool game system. And it's not, I'm not going to use game system. I'm going to say system for me to play these games. And as Solitaire, how it works out very well. Some of the things you're going to need. And for some people, they may be like, you know what, this is too much. But for me, I love it. I absolutely love it. And there's so much to learn about it, from not only the gaming aspect, but also just the topic of actually everything from aviation, what's out there. So if you're, you enjoy planes, you enjoy stuff like that, then this video is probably going to be right for you. And if not, well, then enjoy the video anyways. Maybe you'll get something out of it. So the first game system I had actually picked up that had to do with fighter jets was called Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey is an extremely, what's the best way to word this? For a tabletop experience, it is by far the most realistic flight simulation you are going to find versus using a computer flight simulator. And, dollar for dollar, I'm going to argue that, if it's something you want to try, you'd probably be way further ahead to try the computer simulation first before you would the tabletop, just for the fact of the learning curve. So reading through this and getting the basics of this game, I quickly realized that I need something a little bit simpler, because I want to be able to break this down. I want to be able to make it work Solitaire. I want to be able to play through it. That's one of my rules with my videos and stuff, is I want to give you guys an honest to God, real life opinion of the game, first-hand experience for me playing it, and not a marketing side to where I'm just going to give you a line of BS because somebody's paying me to tell you it's a great game. So that's the difference. That's right there. I'm going to get that out there, right now. So the second game system I found that I really enjoyed, reading through it, the concepts, I picked them up pretty quick, went through it, was able to say, yup, I can be able to do this. And that was this one right here, Flight Leader. And Flight Leader is it's a really, really cool game. It gives you the perspective of the pilot in the aircraft piloting it, and everything you do, you have to make the decisions. Of course, those are reflected, and then of course you do have a plane surface where you're going to move markers on the board, and it's going to reflect positions on the map, movement, so on and so forth. And they give you a lot of these. If you're familiar with war games, you're going to recognize these guys. They're these little chits, I guess you would call them, little cardboard things like this. And you almost need a microscope to be able to read all the information off of it to source back to your book. And it's not bad. Yeah, the design of it is rather simple, I will say, for the time that it was made and for the technology level at that time of the 80s of what we had, and would have been really feasible to make what we have as far as miniatures, technology, and all that today. So back then, yeah, this was feasible, and by far today, still a lot of war games use them. And they work. My only issue with them is they can get lost easily. If you're like me and you have dogs, they can get eaten, and then nothing ruins a game like not having this little piece of square cardboard to tell you all the vital information you need, because now you don't have all the pieces and something feels incomplete about the game. So I quickly learned I wanted something different, something more robust, something that could be used through a variety of different games that I enjoy, but stay consistent between all of them. And I had found a way to do that, and I'll get into that here a little bit later. Now, some of the things about Flight Leader, it does cover different eras of conflicts throughout U.S. history, and depending on where you want to start, where your interests lie with that, you can jump right into it and go right into there. But the thing I liked about it, like I said, was the overall viewpoint of you are actually piloting this thing, and all these decisions are up to you. And moving on from there, it's you being pitted against your other opponents on the board, and may the best man win, or woman win, and who's going to outsmart who. Basically your typical strategy type of game. Was not bad, and I had started myself a little resource to where, of course, you guys will probably recognize this if you follow my channel for any amount of time. I'd start with one of these, and you know, where did I have to start? I actually had found a real flight training instruction manual from the United States Naval Academy, and the PDF was online. I read through it. It was explaining basic combat maneuvers, stuff like that, which helped me devise an idea how to make a solo matrix and make it realistic for gameplay when I play, and it really did help. So I spent a lot of time on Flight Leader and put a lot into Flight Leader, learned the system, and kind of helped make my own Solitaire system, or like the term everybody likes to use today, AI, which I don't understand how rolling dice equals AI. I'm not going to get into that. It's, to me, there's AI, then there's dice rolling, and they should not be loosely referenced to either or. So anyways, I was able to write up a couple of simple quick pages for myself, just answering very simple questions that I want to know. Those questions are, here's my movement, I've made my movement, done a radar lock on this, I'm getting ready to fire this missile, and then at that point, how is, because I don't have an opponent, I'm playing this Solitaire, how is my opponent going to react to this? And I had gone through and just done some basic combat reaction maneuvers, and going off the flight naval flight manual right here, you know, was able to come up with a list pretty quickly. Reading the descriptions really helped me understand the difference between the maneuvers, how they were executed, the reason behind them, and everything. So that helped a lot. That's where I said in the beginning of the video, this level of gaming is a lot different from fantasy gaming. Fantasy gaming is a good entry point for anybody looking for tabletop gaming, because it's something we can all grasp, something we can all reference back to, whether you know, you enjoy the Lord of the Rings trilogies, whether it's Game of Thrones, you know, what have you. Everybody can have a pre-notion of what they want out of the game and kind of what they're expecting to expect how the game goes. So it's a lot easy. It's easier. Can't talk today. Need another sip of coffee here. Proper caffeination. Don't forget that, folks. For them to be able to grasp some of these ideas and be able to enjoy a gaming experience at a table. Whereas with this, this is more or less of a gaming experience because you like it, because you have passion in your heart and you want to learn more about it. Something draws you to it. Now, however that is, if you're like me, you're a gearhead, you sit and look at this stuff and just marvel over the mechanical magnificence of these things and what they can do. It takes it to a whole different level, you know, for me. And anyways, that's what brought me to here and really helped me with building this little matrix, if you will. So some of the maneuvers are going to go through. Some of them we may know, some of them you may not. Obviously, you're going to have a barrel roll attack. You're going to have a high yo-yo. You're going to have a flat scissor. You're going to have a combat spread. You're going to have an offensive rolling scissor, an offensive perch set, and a canned beam quarter. And it breaks it all down in this naval manual that I went through. And like I said, it just helps get some of the basic concepts in my mind and really did help with the gaming. Moving on from there, I quickly learned that, you know, okay, I had to make myself up some quick notes. I had to have some quick references for this game, because when this game was invented, the whole idea beyond playing solitaire, I'm going to say, on your, you know, with a deck of cards, solitaire gameplay, I think was extremely foreign at that time, because this is something you're going to do with a lot of people at a table. Unlike our current, I'm going to say, lifestyles today, where we're seeing tabletop gaming becoming far more and more solitaire friendly. Yeah, I had to go through and make those tables up for myself, and it worked. It worked for my gaming experience, and I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it for a while. But let's now look at what I'm into now, and why, for those of you just coming into it, if it's something that piques your interest and you may want to learn more about, that you may want to look at this game system first, because it has a lot of simplicity, even though it's a simple game to learn, it's a simple game to understand. There's a whole lot of complexity, variables, and real to life physics built into it that really do reflect, depending on the aircraft that you select in the scenario that you are decide to play in. And that game is this one right here, which is called Missile Threat. And if you've never heard of this game, this is a fantastic air combat game. Everything utilizes a D6 system, like many of these games do. If you're familiar with war type of gaming, they do utilize standardized 6-sided dice, which is good, because if you're a tabletop gamer, chances are you have multiple dice sets, so you already have, you know, that stuff on hand. But the thing that I love about this game, where this game is different compared to Flight Leader, compared to Birds of Prey, even compared to another one that I bought that was an older version. I'm not going to say older version. It was supposed to be a more modernized and detailed flight scenario type of thing. And let me grab that one for you. It's called Air War. So if you're not familiar with this, TSR, when TSR was TSR, and if you know what TSR are, they were the original publishers of Dungeons & Dragons. I'm not talking about the reboot, if you will, of TSR that was Gygax's sons that were involved in that. I'm talking about the original TSR before Wizards of the Coast and all that drama. We're not even going to get into that ball of wax, and honestly don't even care. But this is the one that they came up with, Air War. Found this, and I picked it up, and reading through the rules, I really figured out very quickly that these two games are extremely similar in gameplay, mechanics, how planes are controlled. This is going to give you far more variability. It's going to have a lot more built into this game as far as, I'm going to say, depth of description, we'll say. What I mean by that is, whereas with this game, Flight Leader, if you're going to move your aircraft at that point, you're going to figure out your speed, your heading, all of those things you would typically, and then your movement's going to be reflected in the movement on your game board, which at that point your game piece would be moved to reflect that. Whereas if Air War is going to take it a step further, it's going to reflect, yeah, your aircraft moves over here, but then due to your heading, your throttle setting, the maneuver used, and then you're going to have to figure out the variability, what they call a side slip. So which means instead of your plane banking and going off like this, now it's going to actually do one of these, as we've seen. If you understand what I'm talking about, we all seen that with aircraft. You've seen YouTube videos where they'll fly, they'll bank like this, they'll level out, and you'll see them do this, which are talking about their side slip. It's a cool little thing that they add in, and there's far more to it than that. But then I quickly kind of realized I was in the same quagmire with Flight Leader. And the fact is, this isn't, you can still find these, you can still pick them up everywhere, but they're not printing this any longer. This is kind of, it's done. TSR is done. That's done, unless they decide to resurrect that game and bring it back. And to be quite honest with you, in this day and age, I don't think it would be as well received as compared to what's out there in the market today, especially if you look at Dogfight Combat Simulator, which is a realistic flight simulator. The array of video games and other things that are out there today that are just far more light years ahead of it. I don't see it. It could be wrong. I could be absolutely wrong, and maybe I'll have to put, you know, my money where my mouth is. But so, same thing with Flight Leader. Flight Leader, this is a very old game. I bought this secondhand. Good luck trying to find it in print anymore. You're probably not going to find it. So when I ran across this, and a friend of mine had recommended it, he said, hey, have you seen this? Have you checked it out? And I said, I'll give it a look. I looked at it. I ordered the printed version. And I'm glad I did. For the fact that there was a lot of stuff in here that I wanted to make photocopies of, and granted, if you had the PDF, that works even better because you can just print it straight off your printer. If not, you know, you can always do the old school way, go get yourself a pad of tracing paper or a pencil and just start tracing some stuff out. But with that being said, differences in Flight Leader, Air War, Missile Threat, and one of the things that I really do like. Missile Threat is extremely simplistic game. It's going to break down everything you do is going to reflect back to the competency of the pilot and the planes you are controlling, and depending on your pilot competency. Now, pilot competency being, what is quality of the pilot? Is it a poor quality pilot? Because if it's a poor quality pilot, it's going to be harder for them to be able to achieve advanced maneuvers, be able to possibly get a decent aim on anything they're trying to fire at, or even try to outmaneuver incoming ordnance from, you know, opposing forces. So, and then you go into average. Average pilot's going to be just that, your average pilot. They're not the best and they're not the worst. They're just average, which is really balanced and fair, in my opinion, for this game system. And especially when it comes down to rolling the dice. Then you go into the next one, which is competent. Your competent pilots, these are going to be obviously your really good pilots. They're going to be able to perform maneuvers very easy. They're going to be very competent in combat situations. And when you go to roll the dice, 9 times out of 10, well, odds are going to be your favor. And last but not least, you're going to have a veteran pilot. Veteran pilot, think of those like your Top Gun pilots, right? Like, ooh, Maverick, right? You know, that type of stuff. And of course, I mean, unless you're just rolling ones every single time, pretty much you're going to be able to pull off whatever you want to do. I shy away from that. I try to shy away from that, and I try to keep my games, everything in a competent pilot. And the reason why is it just makes everything very fair and balanced across the board, even Solitaire, and presents its own type of challenges for me. So reading through Missile Threat, it's a very, very simple system as to how they really do break things down. I'm gonna see if I can find a page here to be able to show you guys. And where did I put it at the end of my book? There we go. So everything in the game is broken down into very simple, quick referenced information that you need to know. So it doesn't slow down gameplay, which I love. One thing I can say about the game is when you do go to set up a scenario, there is a lot of preparation time that's going to be put into that, and I'll get into that and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But for most part, everything in the game is broken down. They have made it very simple. This is a blank sheet right here, and as you can see right here, you got your icons, so you can take a quick look at what you're looking at any aircraft, any type of anti-aircraft, or if you're using a surface-to-air missile system, something like that. And it's going to give you the basic information that you really need to know for the game, which doesn't slow it down, which is great. And that being the range of the craft. How many game terms does that craft have that it can be able to maneuver, move across the board, try to complete its objective, and then before it has to return to refuel? I really like that, because what this does is you have to sit down and come up with a flight plan first. You have to come up with an idea looking at, you have this many turns, which is going to reflect your fuel. You got to be able to span this much area of movement to be able to achieve your objective. That's if everything goes to plan. Okay, there's a saying. Always have a backup plan. You know why? Because chances are your original plan is not going to work, and you're going to have to fall to your backup plan and hope to God that that one works instead. And this game is no different. You're going to find out fairly quickly, if you decide to try Missile Threat, that you have your clear, concise plan. You know where you want the game to go. You have this all worked out into your head, probably by, I'm going to say, your second turn. Everything's going good. You're heading towards your destination point, and then that's at that point everything is going to go to shit quickly. And what I mean by that is you're going to have enemy aircraft. You're going to have to maneuver. It's going to throw you off course. You're going to have to try to engage that enemy and take them out. And hopefully your dice rolls go well enough to neutralize your threats before the turn runs out and your craft has to return to refuel and be able to get back into the game. And so there's a lot to it right there. And we're just covering the range of the craft. Next thing that goes into is your radar. What kind of radar are you using? And this is a very, very interesting one that I really do like, that really does add a very, very cool element of reality into the game. And the fact is the radar, is it reading in a 20 degree, 45, 50 degree range? Is it 360 degrees? What is the altitude height that the radar is reading, and the total range on the game board that it is reading? So as you're putting together scenarios, you can start to see this, and you can start to formulate these plans. Well, wait a minute. If I come in at a very low attack run, I can go below the enemy's radar, and if I can maintain a low altitude and be able to achieve this, I'll be able to do it. But that all hinges on the fact that there are no surprise patrols going by, or any other little nasties that are going to pop up along the way, which gets into a different area of this game, which does have a solo variant PDF built into it that's excellent. And oh yeah, it adds a huge level of complexity to it, and just blew my mind playing away with it. That's how amazing it is. So radar is another thing that you really have to put a lot of emphasis on. You got to think about, particularly when you choose your aircraft, what kinds of radar they have compared to ground radar, your enemy's radar, how this all reacts. And of course, that goes back into also countermeasures. What are you going to use for countermeasures? Some of your aircraft, the more modern ones at that point, are going to be able to have radar jamming, or otherwise known as electronic countermeasures, which is going to give you an upper hand when you're entering into enemy area. Also, another thing to consider is you're going to have flares. You're going to be able to drop flares, particularly if you're trying to outmaneuver, outrun an incoming ballistic missile. You're going to be able to do that. All depends on the era you're playing in, though, because, like I said, this game does follow our historical timeline. So you can't really expect to be taking an old Korean era MiG and going up against, you know, a very modern installment of an airbase. And yeah, you're not going to have too many electronic countermeasures to be able to block that radar. You're pretty much going to be a sitting duck. You're going to be underpowered, undermaneuvered, and you're going to be annihilated quickly, which is cool how they set up the game. I'm going to how they break everything up. I'm going to get into that. Next thing is that's very cool, and I'll show you how I personally keep track of it, things that I use that really help with this. And that's going to be your ceiling. Your ceiling is going to be how much altitude can your craft gain before that's it. You're not going to gain more altitude. You've hit the plateau. That's it. You're no more. And this is very interesting as well, because without going into a whole lot, there's many things you have to consider, and what all three of these games do share in common are the physics behind it. And the fact is this: when you go to climb altitude, you begin to lose speed. When you lose altitude and gravity's pulling you back to the earth, you are going to gain speed. So, and you can't forget turning either. When you turn, you're going to lose speed. It depends on the craft and the technology level built into them, which more into the details a little bit later about that. But the basics behind it, these are some of the other things you're going to be confronting as well, which are all going to add back into. You got to remember when this starts is that you got a flight plan. You got a flight plan you got to follow, because with the flight plan, you're only going to have so many rounds of the game before that craft has to return back, whether it's to base, a carrier, whichever you're using as your point to be able to refuel and rearm your planes. Okay, last thing it's going to get into, which I love about this game, these little icons right here. If you look at that, this guy right here, which are hard points. If you do not know what a hard point is, very simple to explain it to you. If you look at a picture of any modern jet military aircraft, besides, of course, our newest, latest, and greatest, which are going to be your Raptors, you're not going to see it, but we'll use an F-18, an F-14, an F-16 as an example. If you look at the wings, you're going to see what looks like those long slats that hang off the wing that all the missiles attach to. Those are called hard points. And depending on the craft that you choose, you're going to be able to also choose your loadout, whether you want to use a surface, an air-to-ground missile, an air-to-air missile, so on and so forth. It covers a lot in there. It gives you a lot of information about it. And then at that point, you have to sit down and figure out the loadout of your craft, how much it's going to carry, because you're only allowed to carry so much ordnance on that plane. And, you know, think of it as like your automobile. You can't take your, you know, little Honda Civic, we'll say, I don't know, fill up the back seat with, let's say 2 pallets of bricks, then get in your car and go up the side of a mountain with the pedal to the floor and expect to just keep gaining speed to get to the top of the mountain. Physics are going to take over, and you're going to quickly find as the air gets thinner, the engine starts slowing down, increased with the weight. Before long, you're going to notice you just keep slowing down ever so slower to where you're barely making it up the side of the mountain, and then gravity takes over and begins to pull you back. I love that about this game. It reflects it as well. Unlike one game I enjoy playing it. I have the flight controller for it with the you know, the actual thruster stick and the actual control stick, and that's called Air Combat 7. I think the thing that cracks me up the most about Air Combat 7 when you look at it is the fact that, you know, you look at your missiles and you have like 80, you know, air-to-ground missiles, and you got like 20 or 30 long-range air-to-air missiles, and you're just kind of like, no kidding. I don't think that's feasible, but it is a video game after all, and it's fun, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. Okay, so a couple of other things that they get into, because I'm already like 40 minutes into this video, that they do cover that's very simple. I do like it, and that is your speed bonus, your turn rate. Turn rates are huge in the way that they work, and I'm going to get a little bit more into game mechanics on this as well. But I made myself up a very quick little diagram for this game. What I did is I printed it off on a printer, just took the back of an old notebook, that cardboard, cardstock, traced it out, cut it, and then just glued it to it. And now I have that for my game table, and I can just put that out there, line it up with my miniatures that I use, and I have all the information at my fingertips that I need to know. And this tells you a lot, and it can be used for a lot, particularly because it's going to give you turn rates of your craft in degrees, how many degrees it can turn. If you go past that, at that point you start losing speed. You have a minimum speed threshold, basically. So if your turn is going to cost you more than the speed you have to sustain that craft in the sky, at that point, guess what? Your craft is going right down to the earth, and hopefully the dice are in your favor and your pilot can eject before they plummet to the earth. So this is huge for the game with missile threat. I love it. I love utilizing this. It was really cool that they did have that in there when I saw it, because before that, this is what I would use on my gaming table, which these aren't bad. They do work for turns and figuring everything else out. And I still do use them, but I found it's just way quicker to use this to be able to take the craft and line it up. So last but not least, because I am expecting company coming into town over this weekend. I'm actually making this video before they show up, because when they do show up, I'm not going to get a whole lot of time to do much more with the video. So I figured I would just steal away a little bit of time and make a video and get one out there for you guys. But let's get into what I have put together, where I sourced it, and what I use for miniatures. This right here is all for my aircraft games, so on and so forth. Let's open it up. Let's take a look at what I'm using and counters that I am using. So I put that together. If you can see, I know it looks like a lot of stuff, but I'm going to explain to you what I use it for. So I had seen these games. They were dirt cheap, old Milton Bradley board games that are made for actually pretty they're made for kids is what they were made for, and it was called Mission Command, I believe it was. Dirt cheap, replacement parts were not bad, and I bought up what I could find, and I got quite a few sets of them for less than 50 bucks. I think I got like 4 sets of these things to be able to put together, and they're very cool. The craft come in 2 different colors, which makes it very easy to, at that point, identify these on the board depending when I start. If I want to be the gray, I'll be the gray, or the blue, all depends. And the cool thing is with the game as well is it already came with these game pieces, identification on the bottom of the wings, being able to, at that point, you know, identify very quickly what is for what, which is another cool thing, which is why I picked them up. But it also came with these little flight stands. So you could put these flight stands on there, like so, and then at that point, you could set these on your game table. Nice thing is it's not cardboard, it's not gonna get knocked off. It's 3-dimensional, and it really does help when you're playing solitaire to really give you a better scope and understanding of everything going on the tabletop, because now you can actually see that in a 3-dimensional space rather than a 2-dimensional with just a flat piece of cardboard on a map. The other thing that I did use, Birds of Prey, which is a very cool game. It came with this system of altitude step chips, which just basically look like square poker chips is what they look like. And the thing I like about Missile Command that makes this very simple is because it's a D6 system, everything goes from 1 to 6. So your minimum speed is 1, your max speed is 6. Your minimum altitude is 1, your max altitude is 6. Now, you will see varying degrees of that depending on what you're using. Some missiles could have an altitude of 7, 8. Some aircraft obviously could possibly go up to 7 altitude, so on and so forth. So there are variables in that, and I like to use these to reflect that. Now in the game, they suggest using a 6-sided dice, and you can move the dice around. What I found playing solitaire very quickly is as you move your pieces around, sometimes what winds up happening is some dice can get intermingled, and then you're looking at the map and you go, wait a minute, I thought that was it. And you look at your paperwork and you're like, oh, 2 turns ago, I got these confused. That's why none of this is making sense. So I decided to incorporate these from Birds of Prey. So it's very simple. They have different colors. I can then take this and say, hey, my aircraft is operating right now at mid-altitude. I'm at an altitude 3. I could drop that in there. I also have a dark blue one where I could place another one and another one. If I wanted to go up to 6, I know I can look at it very quickly. Okay, that's an altitude 3, 4, 5, and then he's at max altitude, topping off with the blue and say 6. Now, don't confuse this with Birds of Prey because it's not how that was intended. I'm just saying I'm using this for missile threat. But the other cool thing that Birds of Prey did incorporate is they have these degree blocks, which is really cool because then I can actually put that on top of the flight step. I can take the miniature and I can say, hey, I have just made a turn and now I'm going into a vertical climb, or I'm going to, at that point, do a 90-degree turn. We'll just say, theoretically, and going into a negative dive, like so. I could be banking at a 45-degree angle, like so, or I could take that off completely and say I am just maintaining at that point level flight. So And the reason why I do that is it makes it far more simple for me. These chips do stick together. Once they snap together, they pretty much hold. And when you move them around on your game board, at that point, I'm moving the whole entire thing in one place. And I've had a couple of games that have spanned over 3 play sessions that have may taken me 3 to 4 days to complete. The cool thing is when I walk back in, all my planes are exactly where I left them. I can look at everything and I can actually say, okay, before I sit down, that one's into this one's going on that and banking this way, he's vertical climb, that's boom, 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 boom. And really did help me. The whole 3D representation thing is key, in my opinion, to any type of solitaire tabletop gaming that you do. So this is one little resource that I did find, and like I said, they're cool. They already came pre-painted. They already came pre-numbered, everything. I just took them out and used them. Now, the other cool thing that they did incorporate with that, and picking up these systems, of course, was they give you your carriers. You also have a few destroyers that come with them too. But the cool thing about missile threat is just not 100% air combat. It also does go into naval combat. It has an area for ground combat. So every aspect of wargaming, if you enjoy that, missile threat is a really, really cool system. And like I said, it does have a solitary system built into it, to where you can play it solitaire. The other thing that I did enjoy, referencing back to the Milton Bradley sets or the Air Command sets that I did pick up, that I really did enjoy, was the fact that they give you these little missile encounters. They can be used as torpedoes, they can be used as missiles, they can be used whatsoever. These really help as well when playing solitaire, along with these angle blocks, and the fact that the missile takes off. I can say, hey, the missile's heading at that point. I can see it. It's going into a vertical boom, 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 climb like so. Or, hey, at that point, it's corrected, and now it may be going on a 45 degree, or it could be possibly just going at straight level flight. Just all depends on what you're using, the characteristics of the missile, so on and so forth, which also gets back to what I brought up earlier, this guy right here. A lot of these missiles will tell you their turn rate, and obviously after each turn, those missiles are going to be corrected, and they may change their course heading, and before they finally burn out of fuel and dropped, or they do at that point hit their target. There's a lot on missiles to cover. I could probably do an entire video on just that section in the book about the missiles, whether it's infrared guided, radar guided. It goes into a lot more than that. Does the missile have a proximity fuse? Does it not have a proximity fuse? So on and so forth. A lot of stuff I'm throwing out here that you're probably like, what the hell are you talking about? But as you get through the game and you play a scenario or two, you see how simple it is, and then you can really absorb a lot of that other information. The other cool thing that I do enjoy using with the game that was really cool was that with that little Milton Bradley set, they give you these little things that reflect islands, which is really cool. I have a lot of play mats that I use for my tabletop games, one of them being water, and I find myself using that a lot. I can always set these into the water and they can reflect islands, and at that point, pulling off of my Battletech, I can deploy SAM missile sites, put those on the map, showing that they are 3D representation. Cool thing is I can use a dice marker to reflect how many missiles have been fired off of that. I have my missile markers to track them, along with the degree angle that they're going to take, the angle of climb and or flight. Just all depends on the characteristic of the missile. And then, of course, last but not least, one of the things that I did pick up looking at this. Now, the way I went with this, I didn't want to like spend a whole lot of freaking money on minis and spending time to paint them, assemble them, and all that, because they were pretty small. So this worked out well for me. I found these sets. I had also found smaller actual miniature aircraft, like so. The thing about these guys though, like this Phantom I have right here, they do work out well with utilizing these blocks. One of the things that I did do that you will find out with this type of gaming is sometimes you have to make modifications to make stuff work. So what I did was I took some of my blocks, I took a drill bit, drilled a hole through there, as you can see. And at that point, when I use some of these planes, I can just do that. And I can say, hey, that's in a dive. It's going to hold it like that. I'm going to be able to do what I want to do on the game board with it. It could be into a straight 90-degree, or we'll say just vertical dive, like so. I can reflect my altitude, my speed, blah, 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 blah. I could be going level flight. I could be doing takeoff. I'm doing a takeoff from a carrier. Actually, that would be more or less like this. That would be 45, like so. You get the point. So I pulled on a lot of different resources to bring this all together for my tabletop and the Solitaire wargaming thing. Like any tabletop game out there, don't care if it's D&D you're playing, I don't care if it's the One Ring, I don't care if it's a cipher system, I don't care what it is out there. You're probably going to find at one point or another you're going to want to have visual representations to be able to track movement and other variations that you may find that may be kind of hard to be able to keep that all up here and not, for me, I enjoy the imagination part of it. I enjoy that level of gaming and what it has. But what I also enjoy is having 3D representations on the board where I can move stuff, and if I'm going to be away from the table for 2, 3, maybe weeks because I just have other things going on, when I come back to it, everything is still right there. And that old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. A 3D representation on the battle mat as well is a lot too. You can walk in, you can look, and you know, a lot of times you're going to look at it and remember exactly where you're at. It's going to be a lot easier to get back into the game and pick right up from there. Note taking is also a very important thing, and specifically the way that Missile Threat has structured the game with the overall flight plan. I really do like that. I really I love that element. I mean, I just can't say it enough. I love Missile Threat. Missile Threat is just an excellent, solid game. Whether you're playing with an opponent, whether you're playing with multiple people at the table, or you decide to go out on a solitaire like myself, it's an excellent game. Now, the cool thing that you are going to find about just touch off real quick, here's the solo play rules, and it goes into the, you know, the basics. The solo rules allow you to play Missile Threat against the most readily available and minimal opponent around yourself. And it goes into how they suggest you randomize and choose missions, how you choose the risk difficulty of that mission, points limits, and how they break that down. The one thing I find myself using quite a bit for the solo game and that is this table right here, which is placing enemy ground assets. They give you an entire table, a random table to go off of. They use a standardized deck of 52 playing cards, pulling those cards out, shuffling them, and randomly drawing a card. I just use the two 12-sided dice. As a matter of fact, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's only 14 options that you can choose from out of here. So I can roll 3d6 together, of course, ignoring anything over 14, and quickly reference that and see what's going to be placed in that area. And the cool thing about it is randomized, so I don't know ahead of time. I've planned my side of the mission. I've chose my aircraft, I chose the era, I chose the loadouts, I chose all of that. I don't know what the enemy has in store. And that really does add a very unique, satisfying level of complication into the game. Now, it breaks down into the book. What is a close air support? What is a strike? What is a combat air patrol? What is a combat search and rescue mission? It's going to give you a brief outline of it and what's expected of each one of those missions, what your objective should be, and what you should do to be able to accomplish that. The other cool thing that I like about the system is the fact how it breaks everything down into this point system, value system. And if you get the PDF, I highly recommend you get yourself some of these plastic pages, print yourself out some of these. You're going to find you're going to be referencing to these pages quite frequently to play the game. And if you have you're going to want several documents out of the book that you're going to want to have right in front of you at all times to be able to reference back to. The thing is your point system. So, and like I said, I could go into to be able to fully cover missile threat in a very comprehensible way for you to completely understand from A to Z would probably take a multitude of videos. And A, I don't have that time. B, I think that would be perhaps more information than maybe most people really want to engage with and devote that much time of their life to get through, but I digress. The point system. So, a very brief summary of how missile threat works. And we're going to use in an example, let's just say my pilot is a average pilot. He is at level flight. He is at, let's say, a altitude of 4. And we'll say he's moving at a speed of 3, we'll just say. So first thing I'm going to want to look at when I move, because the thing that it does stress about in this game that I do love that you have to remember, every turn, regardless, your craft will move. It has to continuously keep moving forward. So at that point, depending on the craft that you have, how fast you are moving, you are going to have a speed bonus associated with that. And of course, they already give you a quick reference to go off of. So you could look at it. So my speed is a 3. I would get it a +2 to my speed bonus for my current speed. Now, we'll say, okay, he's cruising at altitude 4 at a speed of 3, and it is at that point, guess what? Tally ho! I got some bad guys coming in. Now, at this point, I'm going to have to make a turn. Let's just say my plane can only turn, we'll say 45 degrees. But in order to be able to put myself into a better position for my turn, I'm going to have to make a 60-degree turn, which means I'm going to lose some speed. So I'm going to look at the turn rate. Well, I'm going to have to make a 60-degree turn. In order to complete that, it's going to cost 2 points. So now my speed at that point is going to be reduced to 1. Okay, my radar contact. Do I got a medium or a small radar? Let's say I got a medium-sized radar. I'm going to get 1 point. And then at that point, what I want to do is I want to see, hey, can I get a radar lock at least on one of these? And in a turn, you're going to be able to get 2 actions. Your move action is given. Your craft is constantly going to be moving in a forward motion. Unless, like I said, your speed at that point, you can't sustain it, and you're going to go, or you get shut down. So then at that point, I'm going to say, okay, I made him a +1. He's a competent pilot. So going back to my reference sheet, being not a competent average, I'm sorry, I did say average. He's an average pilot. To do a pilot check, I'm going to have a 6 or better. But the cool thing is, in order to do a radar lock on this, his radar type is a medium, so he gets +1 point for that. So that's going to bring me down to if it was a 6, I get a +1. So that's actually going to be 5 or better, because that's how it's going to reflect. I'm getting a bonus because I'm using that radar, so it's going to make that check a little bit easier for myself. Okay, so I'm going to, at that point, let's say, roll the 6-sided dice. But let's just say that my enemy had a electronic countermeasure that he was currently, he has employed. We'll just say theoretically. Now, that gives him a +1 bonus, which means instead of a 5, now that's going to bring my roll back up to a 6. So I'm going to have to roll a 6 or better. So I would roll my 2d6, I would take a look, and I had rolled an 8, and I would be like, bingo, despite what he had going on, I have a radar lock. And now, at that point, I could fire my missile, but then it would go over to the opponent's turn. Now, same thing, the opponent's going to, got to remember the craft is always moving in a forward motion. So the move is going to be reflected, and then at that point, the maneuver he's going to do and how he's going to react, probably not too kindly to me with a radar lock on him. And then at that point, combat will ensue. That's the basics of it. But as you go further into it, even your weapons, the weapons that you decide to choose, are going to give you a bonus on a point system. So you're going to have certain sheets of paper, obviously, that you're going to want to have in front of you at all times to really help you be able to give you the information that you're going to need fairly quickly to keep things moving at a fairly decent clip. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, just that little snippet that I had explained to you and what you're trying to figure out, you have to keep your eye on your flight plan and make sure you're able to achieve your objective within your turn. So that's the basic. And don't let that scare you when I say that, basic. That's just a very basic description on how simple missile threat actually is, how it works. There's a lot more of, like, the idea of playing chess. When you play this game, instead of thinking of just your next move, you're really going to want to start now thinking 3, maybe 4 moves ahead. You're going to want to look at your flight plan. And if something does pop up, you're, like I said, make sure you have your second plan in place, because chances are your first plan is not going to work. So with that, with everything I have rambled out of my mouth to you guys so far, if you made it to this part of the video, great for you. We're going to get into the eras that missile threat gives you and that it covers. And there's way more to this game than just this. This is just the basics of everything. So this is going to start from the Vietnam era. It's going to go into the Arab-Israeli wars, the Indo-Pakistani wars, Southern African border wars, the Ogaden wars, the Iran-Iraq war, the Falkland wars, the Gulf War, the Bosnia-Kosovo wars, the Eritrean-Ethiopian wars, Taiwan Strait crisis. And then, of course, it's going to give you all the information that you need. When you go into the section, you decide, hey, this is the era I want to play in. This is what I want to do. The cool thing is, which is really cool about this game setup, if I can get to the opening page to be able to show you. So here's the Vietnam War era right here. It's going to give you a brief, basically synopsis of what the conflict was, and you can look through that, decide which side you want to play. The cool thing is, like with the Vietnam, it had the Vietnam era missile successful launch table. So not all eras are the same. As technology improved and things got better, it has been reflected in this. But in here, you can always have the problem where you get your radar lock, you go to fire your missile, and guess what? It's a dud. It doesn't go off. It just falls off the hard point straight to earth. But as you go through it, it gives you your full, complete list. All your craft, all your information that you really need to know is going to be right here. Like what I covered with you when I explained all these different symbols, which they mean. Clear, concise, all your loadouts that are possible that craft can carry, and of course the range, how many turns it's going to take you to be able to go in and do what you have to do. So it covers a wide array of aircraft. You have everything from fighter jets all the way down to helicopters. It goes into ground assets for your side, for the opponent's side, and from there, everything else is left up to you. That's the beauteous part of this game. It's going to give you the historical snapshot of the conflict, what the conflict was over, but from there, it's left up to you to create it. You can do whatever you want. Even if, let's say, you didn't want to utilize historical facts. Let's say you wanted to import a level of fantasy into this. What if this is a parallel universe such as ours, maybe? That planet has conflict like we know here, but what if there are two, let's say, opposing beings on the face of this planet? Maybe one of them tends more towards like the Tolkien world, where you would have the view of, you know, the hierarchy of the elves and the humans and so on and so forth. And over here, perhaps maybe we'll say you got these dwarves, right? In any fantasy setting, let's say the dwarves, elves, they don't get along and they constantly fight. So what if we were to reflect that into a Vietnam era type of thing, where, hey, it's going to be them warring against one another in these type of aircraft? You could do that. You could use all the information in here. It give you everything you need to know to be able to play the game, move the pieces, have the dice, have the matrix, have everything. But you could just put your own layer of the way you saw that maybe the war was about. So it's completely up to you. Now, by no stretch of the imagination, don't get me wrong, am I endorsing, you know, conflict, war, destruction of humankind or anything like that to any extent whatsoever. What I am, you know, doing with this is I enjoy this. I enjoy, it's a different type of gaming for me. It really is. It's it's taken me out of my comfort zone of gaming and put me into uncharted waters. And it's exciting for the fact that it's new, and it's something that has challenged me not only to come up with a more unique way to play the solitaire, but after making my own way how to play these older games solitaire, and then finding this one and how simplistic they made it, just made me fall in love with this game fairly quickly. And I find myself, you know, opening the pages and putting the minis out on the board and playing this quite often. So this is Missile Threat in a nutshell. And like I said, I have not really scratched the surface of it. To learn the game is simple. It is very simple. As a matter of fact, if I was to sum all these pages up, let's see here. Almost there. Okay, so you have roughly that amount of the book, if you look at it in comparison to that. That's going to cover all the basics of the game as a whole. And the first thing it's going to go into is your aircraft. And then it's going to break off into another section, which I have not played yet. I'm going to get more so into that. And I already have, of course, minis for naval already in my possession, waiting to be deployed. So then it goes into a smaller section for naval combat. It then breaks it up into the difference between just playing a quick one-on-one game between you and an opponent, or a solitaire game, just easy skirmish, compared to doing a campaign. If you want to do a campaign, campaigns have different rules. It also goes into, they have so much for Missile Threat that I would expect to see more in the future come out, to be honest with you. And so everything else it gives you in that book right there is just all information for craft, ordnance, and necessary things that you have to know. Towards the end of the book, it's going to give you a full list of counters that you can print off and cut out to use for your tabletop, or however you would like to do that. Personally, I don't want to cut my book up, so a lot of these I have just printed out. And of course, as you will see, you probably recognize that. And they give you a couple templates to use and to be able to put on your tabletop. That really does work nice. And then of course at the very back of the book, they give you all your quick reference that you need to actually play the game. But to learn the game, it's very simple. If you're not familiar with a war type of game, it may be a little foreign to you at first, and you're going to have to read through it and maybe let it digest and go back through it a second time, but you'll grasp the concept of it and understand it pretty quickly. If you're looking to get into a new style of gaming, and maybe Missile Threat, something like this that does interest you, I highly do recommend it. Now this is printed by Ostfront Publishing. So ostfrontpublishing.com. I'm going to hold that up into the camera so you can actually see that right there. All right. Really, I would highly recommend going to Wargaming Vault online if you're not familiar with that. Same company that makes RPG Drive-Thru. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure you can find it on RPG Drive-Thru, but you're going to find just the core rule book. If you go to the Wargaming Vault, if you already have an account on RPG Drive-Thru, just go to the Wargaming Vault and sign in underneath your normal credentials. It's the same company. It'll get you right into their catalog, and then at that point, you're going to find a whole lot of supplements for Missile Threat The solo play also goes into, if you want to go into a campaign where you want to do a private war, you want to be able to enlist your own mercenaries, and then it's going to reflect the currency that you have, how much it's going to cost you to refuel and rearm these planes to send them up, how much money you're going to receive off successfully completing that objective, which adds a whole nother layer of complexity to the game, a little bit more realism, particularly if you want to take it more into a story type of idea. Like I was explaining earlier, let's say you want to bridge that from fantasy to reality in a alternative world. You could do that utilizing that. It gives you the tools to do it. At the end of the day, it's a game. It's going to give you the tools how to play the game. How you play the game, it's entirely up to you, and which direction you take it in is yours and yours alone to do yourself. All right, my friends, those are my thoughts and not yours. And I hope you enjoyed it. Just wanted to do this to get a quick a video out there, kind of touch base with everybody. I know I've been quiet it's been a long time. I have had a lot on my plate, and it hasn't been until recently, like I said, that these situations and time constraints have really allowed me to be able to do a video and really start to re-engage with gaming to the way that I enjoyed it. So with that being said, my friends, hope you enjoy it. Thanks for checking out the video, and next time I get some time, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get another one and try to get it out there. All right, my friends, game on.